Black SUV crashed through the hospital's emergency entrance gates with a loud screech. Tires smoked across the wet pavement as four men in dark suits jumped out before the vehicle even stopped moving. "Help him. He's losing too much blood," one of them shouted. The sliding glass doors flew open. Nurses froze. A security guard stumbled backward. The man being carried inside was covered in blood. His expensive black suit had been cut open by bullets. One hand hung lifelessly toward the floor while crimson drops splashed across the white hospital tiles. "Move," another bodyguard yelled. "He's still breathing." Dr. Dara Kings had been in the supply room gathering fresh gloves for her very first night shift when she heard the shouting. She ran toward the emergency room without thinking. "What happened?" she asked. The bodyguards laid the wounded man onto a hospital bed. "He was ambushed," one of them said. "Save him." Before Dara could answer, the hospital director rushed into the room. The moment he looked at the patient's face, every bit of color disappeared from his own. "Oh no," he whispered. His voice trembled. "Everyone step away from that patient. Right now." If you enjoy powerful stories about courage, justice, and unexpected heroes, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. It really helps the channel grow, and you won't miss the next unforgettable story. Dara looked from the director to the unconscious man. His pulse was weak. His breathing was shallow. "He needs surgery," she said. "No." The director's answer came so fast that everyone turned to look at him. "No one touches him." Dara frowned. "Sir, he's dying." I said no. The room became silent except for the heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. One of the older nurses leaned close to Dara and whispered, "Do what he says." "But why?" The nurse swallowed hard. "Because that man is Kong Min-jae." Several people gasped. Even some of the bodyguards lowered their heads. Dara had heard the name before. Everyone had. Some people called him a businessman. Others called him the most feared Korean Mafia boss in the city. Rumors surrounded him like shadows. But none of those rumors mattered to Dara. All she could see was a patient who was slipping away. Only 3 hours earlier, she had walked into the hospital carrying a small lunch bag and a heart full of hope. It had been the happiest day of her life. She remembered standing outside the hospital entrance, looking up at the tall building. "I made it, Mama," she had whispered to herself. Her mother had passed away years before. Every difficult exam, every sleepless night, every time someone laughed at her because she was a big black woman who dreamed of becoming a trauma doctor, she had kept going. She had promised herself that no patient would ever feel unwanted if she could help it. But her first day had not gone the way she imagined. When she arrived that evening, several doctors had looked her up and down. One of them laughed. "So you're the new doctor?" "Yes, sir." "You sure you're not looking for the cafeteria?" A few people chuckled. Another doctor shook his head. "They're hiring anybody these days." Dara forced herself to smile. "I'll do my best." A nurse later showed her around the emergency department. "You don't have to mind them," the nurse had said quietly. "They'll come around." "I hope so." Still, the jokes continued. One doctor asked if she could keep up during emergencies. Another questioned whether patients would trust someone so new. Someone else whispered loudly enough for Dara to hear. "She's going to quit before the month ends." Every word hurt, but she never answered back. She simply kept learning. She checked every room carefully. She introduced herself politely to every patient. She thanked every cleaner she met. She believed respect should never depend on someone's job title. Now, only hours later, she found herself standing beside a man who had only minutes left to live. The director stepped closer. "I gave an order." Dara looked at him. "Sir, with respect, he needs immediate surgery." "You don't understand." "Then help me understand. If he dies here, that's one problem." Dara blinked. "If he lives," the director lowered his voice, "every enemy he has will know this hospital helped him." Fear spread across the room. One nurse quietly backed away. Another doctor removed his gloves and walked out. The bodyguards watched everything without speaking. One of them looked at Dara. "Doctor," his voice cracked. "Please." She checked the patient's pulse again. It was weaker now. Beep, beep, beep. Slower. Too slow. Dara took a deep breath. She looked at the director again. "I became a doctor to save lives. And you'll lose your job if you touch him." She answered softly. "If I let him die without trying." She placed one trembling hand over her chest. "I couldn't live with myself." The director pointed toward the exit. "Walk away." Dara looked down at the unconscious man. She imagined her mother's voice. "Always do what is right, even when it costs you." She closed her eyes for one brief second. Then she opened them again. "They can suspend me." The room became perfectly still. "They can take my job." Another heartbeat echoed through the room. "They can even take my medical license." She reached for a pair of surgical gloves. "But they will never make me abandon someone who still has a chance to live." The director's face hardened. "If you begin this surgery, Dr. Dara Kings." He paused long enough for everyone to feel the weight of his words. "Your career in this hospital is over." Dara slowly pulled the first glove onto her hand. Then the second. She looked directly into the eyes of the frightened interns standing near the wall. I can't force either of you to help me. Neither of them moved. Outside, more black SUVs pulled into the hospital parking lot. At the very same moment, several unfamiliar vehicles stopped across the street. Men carrying hidden weapons stepped out, watching the emergency entrance from a distance. Inside the operating room, the patient's heart monitor suddenly let out a long, terrifying alarm. The line on the screen began to flatten, and Dara realized she had only seconds left to decide whether to risk everything or watch a man die. The sharp alarm from the heart monitor filled the operating room. "His heart is failing," one of the interns shouted. Dara rushed to the bedside and placed 2 fingers against the man's neck. "I can barely feel a pulse." The hospital director folded his arms. "Step away, Dr. Dara Kings. This is your last warning." Dara did not even look at him. "Prepare the operating room." The 2 interns looked at each other. One swallowed hard. "Doctor, if we help you, we'll be suspended too." "I know," Dara answered quietly. "And you're still going?" She nodded. "I didn't spend years studying medicine just to watch someone die because people were afraid." The room fell silent. The younger intern took one deep breath. "I'm with you." The second intern looked toward the director, then back at Dara. "My parents always told me a doctor answers to God before anyone else." He pulled on a pair of gloves. "I'm with you too." The director slammed his clipboard onto a nearby table. "Every one of you is making the biggest mistake of your lives." Dara spoke without raising her voice. "Move him." The bodyguards carefully rolled Kong Min-jae's bed toward the operating room. One of them stopped beside Dara. "If he lives." His voice shook with emotion. "Our family will never forget this." Dara answered without slowing down. "I'm not saving him because of who he is." She looked at the unconscious patient. "I'm saving him because he's alive." Minutes later, bright surgical lights flooded the room. Machines hummed. Metal instruments rested neatly on trays. The air smelled of disinfectant. Dara washed her hands while silently repeating every step she had learned during training. She knew she was capable. She only prayed her hands would stay steady. The nurse handed her a mask. "You still have time to walk away." Dara shook her head. "No." Outside the operating room, the director picked up his phone. "Call the board members." He lowered his voice. The rookie ignored my direct order. He listened for a moment. "Yes." Another pause. "I'll deal with her after the surgery." Inside the operating room, Dara leaned over the patient. Blood pressure dropping. Pulse weak. Oxygen falling. She took one deep breath. "Let's begin." The first incision was careful, controlled, precise. The younger intern watched in surprise. "Doctor, what? You don't look nervous." Dara smiled behind her mask. "I am nervous. You don't show it. My patient needs calm hands, not scared hands." Several minutes passed. The operation became harder. "There is another wound," one intern cried. "I see it. He's losing too much blood. More suction." "Yes, doctor." Sweat rolled down Dara's forehead. She ignored it. Her eyes never left the wound. One bodyguard stood behind the operating room window. His hands were tightly folded together. He had seen battles. He had survived shootings. Yet nothing frightened him like waiting outside those doors. Another bodyguard whispered beside him, "If our boss dies." The first one closed his eyes. "He won't." "How do you know?" He looked through the glass. "Because she hasn't given up." Inside, another problem appeared. "Doctor, what is it?" "We're almost out of O-negative blood." The room froze. Dara looked toward the storage nurse. "That's all." "Yes." She thought quickly. "Call the blood bank. They're saying delivery will take at least 25 minutes. We don't have 25 minutes. The younger intern looked frightened. "What do we do?" Dara closed her eyes for only 1 second. Then she remembered one of her professors. Good doctors memorize books. Great doctors solve problems. She opened her eyes. "Start the emergency transfusion protocol." The intern blinked. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "It isn't perfect. Neither is letting him die." Everyone moved at once. Machines beeped louder. The patient's heartbeat suddenly became irregular. "Doctor, I see it. It keeps dropping. Stay with me." Dara whispered to the unconscious man. "You've come this far." The nurse looked confused. "Doctor, he can't hear you." "Maybe not." She continued working. "But I can." Another difficult minute passed. Then another. The operation seemed endless. Finally, the bleeding slowed. The heart monitor became steadier. Beep, beep, beep. The room became quiet. The younger intern slowly smiled. "I think." Nobody answered. He looked at the monitor again. "I think we did it." Dara carefully finished the final stitch. She stepped back. "Close him." The nurse checked every reading twice. Blood pressure was improving. Pulse was stronger. Oxygen levels were climbing. She looked at Dara with tears in her eyes. "You saved him." No one celebrated. No one cheered. Everyone simply stood there, exhausted. Dara removed her gloves. "Let's transfer him to intensive care." She had barely taken 2 steps toward the door when it swung open. The hospital director entered with 6 security officers. His face was cold. Dr. Dara Kings. She looked at him calmly. Yes, sir. You ignored a direct order from hospital leadership. I treated a dying patient. You endangered this entire hospital. I fulfilled my duty. You used hospital resources without authorization. I saved a life. You put every employee at risk. I would make the same choice again. The director stared at her for several long seconds. Then he reached into a folder. He pulled out a document. Without saying another word, he handed it to her. Dara looked down. Across the top of the page were words that made her heart sink. Notice of immediate suspension. Her hands trembled. The younger intern stepped forward. Sir, she saved him. Silence. The second intern spoke. If she hadn't acted, he would be dead. I said silence. The director pointed toward Dara. Turn in your hospital identification badge. The room became painfully quiet. One nurse quietly wiped tears from her face. Another looked away in shame. Dara slowly removed the identification card hanging around her neck. She stared at it for a moment. Only that morning she had proudly clipped it onto her white coat. Now she placed it into the director's hand. He slipped it into his pocket. Leave this hospital immediately. Dara glanced once toward the intensive care unit, where Kong Min-jae was being wheeled away. She whispered so softly that almost no one heard her. I hope you survive. She turned and walked toward the exit with her head held high. Behind her, whispers spread through the hallway. The rookie is finished. She threw away her whole career. No hospital will ever hire her again. Dara kept walking. She refused to cry where they could see her. But unknown to everyone in that hallway, the unconscious man she had just saved was beginning to move his fingers. And as his eyes slowly opened inside the intensive care unit, his first weak words left every bodyguard frozen in place. Where? He struggled to breathe. Is. Another painful breath escaped him. The doctor who saved my life? The bodyguards rushed to Kong Min-jae's bedside. Boss, don't try to talk. You've lost a lot of blood. The doctors said you need to rest. Kong slowly opened his eyes. His face was pale, but there was still authority in his voice. I asked, where's the doctor? The oldest bodyguard lowered his head. She was suspended. Kong frowned. What? The hospital director suspended her immediately after the surgery. His breathing became heavier. For saving me? Yes, boss. Another long silence filled the room. Kong slowly closed his eyes. Bring me every detail. Right away. Outside the intensive care unit, Dara walked through the hospital lobby carrying a small cardboard box with the few personal items she had brought on her first day. A coffee mug, a notebook, a framed picture of her late mother, her stethoscope. That was all. Several employees stood near the reception desk pretending not to watch her. Some whispered anyway. I told you she wouldn't last. She thought she knew better than the director. Who argues with hospital management on the first day? Dara kept walking. Her heart hurt more than her feet. She had imagined leaving the hospital after years of service with respect and honor. Instead, she was leaving before sunrise on her very first shift. As she reached the parking lot, someone called her name. Dr. Kings. She turned around. The 2 interns came running after her. The younger one looked close to tears. We're so sorry. You shouldn't apologize, Dara said gently. You only helped because I asked. We'll tell everyone what really happened. Dara smiled sadly. Thank you. It isn't fair. No, she admitted. It isn't. The second intern shook his head. You saved a man's life. I know. They punished the wrong person. Dara looked toward the hospital building one last time. Sometimes doing the right thing has a price. The younger intern asked quietly, if you had another chance, would you still perform the surgery? Without thinking, Dara answered, yes. Even knowing this would happen. Yes. Why? She looked at both of them. Because that man was someone's son. She paused. Maybe someone's father. Another pause. And if it were someone I loved lying on that bed, I would pray a doctor ignored every order and try to save them. Neither in turn could speak. Dara thanked them again before climbing into her old car. The engine struggled before finally starting. She drove away with tears rolling down her cheeks. By noon, every local news station was talking about the incident. Breaking news. A rookie doctor has been suspended after ignoring hospital orders during an unauthorized emergency operation. Television reporters stood outside the hospital entrance. Nobody mentioned that the patient had survived because of her. Instead, the headlines focused on the danger. On social media, thousands of strangers shared opinions. She should lose her license. Doctors must follow hospital rules. She wanted attention. Very few people asked the most important question. Did she save a life? That afternoon, Dara sat quietly inside her small apartment. The suspension letter rested on the kitchen table. She had already read it 6 times. Every sentence felt heavier than the last. Her phone finally rang. She smiled when she saw the name. Marcus, her fiancé. She answered quickly. Hi. His voice sounded unusually cold. I saw the news. So did everyone else. What were you thinking? I was thinking about my patient. You embarrassed yourself. I saved him. You disobeyed your employer. He was dying. Marcus sighed loudly. You've always been too emotional. Dara sat in silence. I thought you'd understand. I understand that our future just became uncertain. What do you mean? My parents already called. She frowned. What did they say? They think marrying someone surrounded by this kind of scandal would destroy my career. Dara felt her chest tighten. Marcus, I think we should postpone the wedding. Her eyes filled with tears. Postpone. For now. You don't believe in me? I believe you made a terrible decision. The line became quiet. After a long moment, Dara whispered, if saving a dying man makes me the wrong person, she wiped away a tear, then maybe you never really knew me. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he ended the call. The silence inside the apartment became almost unbearable. Dara slowly removed her engagement ring. She placed it beside the suspension letter. Then she cried, not because she regretted saving a life, but because everything she had worked for seemed to be disappearing one piece at a time. Across the city, Kang Min-jae sat upright despite his doctor's protests. You should still be in bed. I've rested enough. One of his most trusted men entered the room carrying a thick folder. You asked for everything about Dr. Dara Kings. Kang reached for it. What did you find? She's 32 years old. Graduated near the top of her medical class. Earned scholarships because she couldn't afford tuition. No disciplinary record. Volunteered at free clinics every weekend. Known for refusing gifts from patients. Kang continued reading. There were photographs, certificates, letters of recommendation. Then one handwritten note from an elderly patient caught his attention. It read, Dr. Dara treated me like I mattered when everyone else walked past my bed. Kang folded the paper carefully. She risked everything. He looked toward the window. For someone she believed was simply another patient. His bodyguard nodded. Yes, boss. Kang's voice became firm. She lost her career because she saved my life. What would you like us to do? Kang stood slowly despite the pain. Find out why that hospital wanted me dead. The room became silent. One bodyguard hesitated. You think this wasn't only about fear? Kang's eyes narrowed. No. He looked back at the hospital across the distant skyline. People don't punish a doctor this quickly unless they're hiding something. At that very moment, inside the hospital director's office, the director locked the door before speaking to 3 nervous board members. The Mafia boss survived. One executive slammed his fist onto the table. This is a disaster. Another whispered. If he starts asking questions. The director swallowed hard. He will discover everything. A 4th executive looked toward the security camera monitor showing Dara leaving the hospital earlier that day. Then we have only one option. What? He pointed at Dara's image on the screen. The doctor must never learn the truth. Outside Dara's apartment building that same evening, a black sedan quietly pulled into the shadows. 2 men remained inside. One looked up toward the window where Dara's living room light was still on. He reached into his jacket, then slowly pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of Dr. Dara Kings. Across the front of it, someone had written 3 chilling words in red ink. Handle her tonight. The man in the black sedan folded the photograph and slipped it back into his jacket. Are you sure this is necessary? The younger man asked. The older one never looked away from Dara's apartment. We don't get paid to ask questions. But she's just a doctor. She became a problem the moment she kept that patient alive. The younger man looked up at the apartment window again. The living room light was still on. What if she already knows something? The older man shook his head. Then we are already too late. They stepped out of the car. Inside the apartment, Dara sat on her couch with her mother's picture resting on her lap. I wish you were here, she whispered. I don't know what to do. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She picked up the suspension letter again. Every sentence felt like another punch. She remembered the excitement she had felt only the night before. Now everything had changed. Her phone buzzed. It was her landlord. Hello, Mr. Collins. Dara, I just saw the news. Yes. There was an uncomfortable pause. I hope everything works out. Thank you. But, Dara closed her eyes. But what? You already know your rent is 2 months behind. I know. I've tried to be patient. I appreciate that. If things don't improve by next week, I'll have to rent the apartment to someone else. I understand. The call ended. Dara lowered the phone slowly. First her job, then her wedding, now her home. She whispered through fresh tears. Lord, please don't let me lose hope. A sudden knock echoed through the apartment. Knock, knock, knock. Dara quickly wiped her face. She walked toward the door. Who is it? No answer. She looked through the peephole. Nobody. She slowly unlocked the door. The hallway was empty. Only a small brown envelope rested on the floor. She picked it up and looked around. Still nobody. After closing the door again, she opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. There were no names. No signature. Only one sentence. Stop asking questions if you want to stay alive. Dara frowned. What questions? She turned the paper over. Nothing. A chill ran down her spine. She had not been asking anyone questions. She barely understood why she had been suspended. So who had sent this? Downstairs, the two men watched her apartment window. She found it. Good. Do we leave now? The older man nodded. She has the message. Neither of them noticed another vehicle parked across the street. Its windows were heavily tinted. Inside sat two of Kong Min-jae's trusted bodyguards. One lowered a pair of binoculars. They're moving. The second bodyguard started the engine. Boss was right. They're already going after her. Stay on them. We protect the doctor. Without her knowing, the black SUV quietly followed the sedan as it disappeared into the night. The next morning, Dara woke after only a few hours of sleep. She almost forgot everything until she saw the suspension letter lying on the table. Reality returned all at once. She looked at her phone. 37 missed calls. Most came from reporters. Several unknown numbers had left voice messages. She deleted them all. Then another call came in. This time she recognized the number. It was her father. She answered. Good morning, Dad. My daughter. His gentle voice almost made her cry again. I saw the news. I'm sorry. For what? For disappointing everyone. Her father became quiet. Dara. Yes. When you were 12 years old, do you remember finding that injured bird? A small smile appeared on her face. I do. You carried that little bird home. You stayed awake all night feeding it. You refused to let it die. Yes. You've always had the same heart. Dara covered her mouth to stop herself from crying. Her father continued. I'm proud of you. Dad, I don't care what television says. I don't care what the hospital says. If you truly saved a dying man. I did. Then you did exactly what you were raised to do. Tears rolled freely down Dara's face. Thank you. No. His voice became stronger. Thank you for choosing compassion. After the call ended, Dara felt a little stronger. Not much, but enough to stand. Enough to keep going. Across the city, Kong Min-jae walked slowly through his private residence. His personal physician followed closely. You should still be recovering. I recover faster than most. A bodyguard approached. The men who threatened Dr. Dara have been identified. Kong stopped walking. Who sent them? We're still tracing the order. Were they able to hurt her? No. They only delivered a warning. Kang's eyes grew colder. They threatened the woman who saved my life. Yes, boss. He turned toward another bodyguard. Increase her protection. 24 hours. No mistakes. The man nodded immediately. It will be done. Kong looked out the window. I owe her a debt. The oldest bodyguard hesitated. Boss, what is it? If the people behind this are the same people who arranged the attack on you, they won't stop. I know. And if Dr. Dara becomes their target, Kong finished the sentence himself. They will keep trying until they believe she's gone. His face hardened. They have made a very expensive mistake. Later that afternoon, Dara decided she could not stay inside any longer. She needed fresh air. She walked toward a nearby grocery store wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, hoping nobody would recognize her. For a few peaceful minutes, everything seemed normal. Then she heard someone whisper, "That's her." Another voice answered, "The suspended doctor." A woman shook her head. "I wouldn't want someone like that treating my family." Dara lowered her eyes and kept walking. She refused to answer. She reached for a carton of milk. Suddenly, an elderly woman standing beside her spoke softly. "Excuse me." Dara turned. "I know who you are." Her heart sank. "I'm sorry if." The elderly woman gently took Dara's hand. "My grandson works at that hospital." Dara looked surprised. "He told me what really happened." The old woman smiled warmly. "You saved a life." Dara felt tears forming again. "Thank you." The woman squeezed her hand. "Don't let the world convince you that kindness was a mistake." For the first time since leaving the hospital, Dara smiled. But neither of them noticed a man standing at the end of the aisle, pretending to read food labels. Hidden beneath his jacket was a small camera. He quietly snapped several pictures of Dara. Then he picked up his phone and whispered, "I found her." A cold voice answered from the other end. "Good. Don't lose sight of her. Tonight." There was a brief pause. "We finished what we started." The man slipped his phone back into his pocket and quietly followed Dara out of the grocery store. He stayed far enough behind that she never noticed him. Every few steps, he lifted his phone and took another picture. "She's heading west," he whispered into a small earpiece. A voice answered immediately. "Keep your distance." "I understand. Do not act until you receive the signal." Dara walked slowly toward her apartment. Her mind was still on the elderly woman's kind words. "Don't let the world convince you that kindness was a mistake." She repeated those words to herself again and again. For the first time in 2 days, she felt a small spark of hope. She had almost reached the crosswalk when a delivery truck suddenly sped through a red light. Its horn blasted. People screamed, "Duck!" Dara turned just in time to see the truck racing straight toward her. She froze. Everything happened so fast. Before she could move, someone grabbed the back of her coat with incredible force. She was pulled backward onto the sidewalk. The truck roared past only inches away. It never slowed down. It disappeared around the corner. Several people rushed toward Dara. Are you all right? That truck almost killed you. She looked around, breathing hard. Who pulled me back? Nobody answered. The man who had saved her was already gone. Across the street, inside a parked SUV, one of Kong Min-jae's bodyguards lowered his hand from the door. He had reached Dara just in time, then disappeared into the crowd before she could see his face. He picked up his phone. Boss. Report. She almost got hit by a truck. Almost. I got her out of the way. There was a long pause. That wasn't an accident, Kong said calmly. I don't believe it was either. Find a truck. We're already on it. Kong ended the call and slowly looked across the room. 5 of his most trusted men were waiting. They've stopped sending warnings. One bodyguard nodded. They're trying to eliminate her. King's voice became firm. From this moment, nobody gets close to Dr. Dara Kings without us knowing. Yes, boss. I want names. I want proof. And I want whoever ordered this brought to me. Every man in the room nodded. Meanwhile, Dara finally reached her apartment. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it. Her hands were still shaking. She replayed the scene over and over. I should have been dead. Her phone rang again. This time, it was one of the interns from the hospital. Dr. Kings? Hello, Ben. You sound tired. I've had a long day. I needed to warn you. Dara immediately stood straight. What happened? The hospital is different. What do you mean? People are destroying records. She frowned. What records? I don't know. But I've seen managers carrying boxes out of the archives. They're shredding documents. Since when? The morning after you were suspended. Dara felt her stomach tighten. Ben, are you certain? I wish I wasn't. Another intern could be heard speaking in the background. Ben lowered his voice. I also heard something else. What? The board isn't only trying to revoke your suspension. What are they doing? They're preparing to accuse you of medical negligence. Dara couldn't believe what she was hearing. But the patient survived. I know. They're saying you performed unauthorized procedures. She sat down slowly. If they succeed, Ben finished her sentence. You could lose your medical license forever. After the call ended, Dara stared at the wall. Nothing made sense anymore. Why were they trying so hard to destroy her? What were they hiding? She walked to her small desk and opened her notebook. On the first page, she wrote 3 questions. Why was Kong Min-jae refused treatment? Why are hospital records disappearing? Who wants me silent? She stared at those questions for several minutes. Then she whispered, I have to know the truth. At that same moment, across the city, Kong Min-jae received another report. One of his investigators placed several photographs on the table. They're all connected. Kong studied them carefully. Hospital Director Samuel Reeves. Board Treasurer Michael Grant. Procurement Chief Helen Brooks. Finance Officer Daniel Ross. What links them? Kong asked. They've all received large payments through shell companies during the last 3 years. Amounts. Millions. Kong looked up. Source. We're still tracing it. Another investigator entered the room carrying a flash drive. We found security footage from the night of the attack. Kong took it. What does it show? It shows something strange. The investigator connected the drive to a screen. The video began playing. Black SUVs appeared. Gunfire erupted. Then one frame caught everyone's attention. A hospital ambulance was parked 2 streets away, long before the shooting happened. Kong narrowed his eyes. Pause. The image froze. He stepped closer. Zoom in. The picture became clearer. The ambulance driver was speaking to one of the gunmen. Nobody in the room spoke. Finally, Kong said quietly, so the hospital knew. One bodyguard looked shocked. They were expecting the attack. Kong nodded slowly. They didn't just refuse to save me. They planned for me to die. Silence filled the room. Then Kong gave a calm but chilling order. Gather every piece of evidence. We're going to expose all of them. Back at the hospital, Director Reeves stood inside the records room watching boxes disappear into an industrial shredder. One board member looked nervous. What if someone already copied the files? They didn't. And the rookie doctor? Reeves smiled coldly. By the time we're finished, everyone will believe she nearly killed a patient. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. He answered. What is it? The voice on the other end spoke quickly. His smile vanished. What do you mean she survived? He listened for another few seconds. Then his face turned pale. The truck failed. He looked around the room. Listen carefully. His voice became sharp. No more mistakes. I don't care what it costs. Dr. Dara Kings must never appear before that disciplinary hearing. After ending the call, he turned toward the window. Far below, hospital staff moved through the parking lot, completely unaware of the storm building around them. Reeves whispered to himself, as long as she's alive, everything we've built can still collapse. At that exact moment, someone quietly slipped a small envelope beneath Dara's apartment door. She walked over and picked it up. There was no name. Inside was a single flash drive and a handwritten note. It read, if you want to know why they suspended you, Watch this before they find you. Dara stared at the flash drive in her hand. Her heart began to race. She looked toward the apartment door, then through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Who left this? She whispered. She locked the deadbolt, closed every curtain, and walked to her old laptop. For a moment, she hesitated. What if this is a trap? Then she remembered the note. If you want to know why they suspended you, watch this before they find you. She took a deep breath and inserted the flash drive. A single video file appeared on the screen. It had no title. She clicked play. The video opened to a hospital security camera recording. The date matched the night Kang Min-jae had been rushed into the emergency room. Dara leaned closer. The footage showed the hospital director speaking to several board members in a private hallway. There was no sound. A few seconds later, another camera angle appeared. This one had audio. The director's voice was clear. If Kang Min-jae dies before sunrise, everything disappears with him. Dara froze. Another man answered. And if one of the doctors saves him? The director laughed. Nobody will be foolish enough to ignore my order. Dara covered her mouth. She remembered every word. Everyone step away from that patient. The video continued. Another executive spoke. Our partners already transferred the final payment. Good, the director replied. Once he's dead, no one will trace the contracts. Dara's hands began shaking. So they wanted him dead. She whispered the words again. They wanted him dead. Suddenly, another face appeared in the video. Dara recognized him immediately. It was the ambulance driver she had seen many times around the hospital. The director handed him a thick envelope. No mistakes. The driver nodded. It'll be done. The recording ended. Dara leaned back in her chair. Nothing about her suspension had been about hospital policy. She had interrupted a murder. Her phone suddenly rang. She jumped. Unknown number. After a moment, she answered. Hello. A calm male voice replied. Dr. Dara Kings? Who's calling? My name doesn't matter. How did you get this number? You've already watched the flash drive. Dara stood up. Who are you? I don't have much time. Are you the one who left it? Yes. Why? Because innocent people are paying for the crimes of powerful men. Who are you? I worked in the hospital finance department. Dara remained silent. The man continued. I copied evidence before they destroyed everything. Why send it to me? Because you're the only person who refused to become part of their plan. Her breathing became slow and careful. You knew they wanted Kang Min-jae dead? I discovered it too late. Then go to the police. I can't. Why not? They're watching me. His voice became unsteady. They've already followed me twice. Dara looked toward her window. Are they following me too? Yes. Listen carefully. They've scheduled your disciplinary hearing for 3 days from now. I know. They're not planning to revoke only your job. I know. They intend to accuse you of criminal negligence. Dara closed her eyes. If they succeed, you'll never practice medicine again. Silence filled the call. Then the man said something that made her blood run cold. And there's one more thing. What? They've hired someone to make sure you never reach that hearing. The line suddenly went dead. No. Dara looked at the phone. The call had ended. She tried calling back. The number no longer existed. She slowly looked toward the flash drive again. Someone had risked everything to warn her. Across the city, Kang Min-jae sat in front of a large screen as his investigators finished reviewing hundreds of financial records. One investigator placed another folder on the table. We traced the money. Kang opened it. Several payments had moved through fake medical supply companies. Each transaction ended in the same account. What company is this? The investigator answered quietly. Black River Holdings. Who owns it? No one on paper. But he slid another document forward. We found the real owner. Kang looked down. His expression changed immediately. So, he slowly closed the folder. It reaches this far. The oldest bodyguard frowned. You know this person? Kang nodded once. Very well. The room became silent. If this information becomes public, the investigator stopped speaking. Kang finished the sentence himself. It won't destroy only the hospital. It will expose half the city's criminal network. He stood. Prepare the cars. Boss, your doctor said you still need rest. I've rested enough. Where are we going? Kang looked toward the city skyline. To protect the woman who chose her oath over her own future. Meanwhile, inside the hospital boardroom, Director Reeves smiled as he looked over a stack of prepared documents. One board member asked nervously, Are you sure this will hold up? It doesn't have to. What do you mean? By the time anyone questions the evidence. He tapped the papers. Dr. Dara Kings will already have lost her license. Another executive looked uncomfortable. And if she brings a lawyer? Reeves smiled. She can't afford one. And if Kang Min-jae appears? The room fell quiet. Reeves slowly stood. He won't. How can you be certain? Because he'll be too busy staying alive. Just then, his phone buzzed. He answered immediately. What? His face changed. Say that again. He stood frozen. The others waited. Finally, he lowered the phone. What happened? One executive asked. Reeves swallowed hard. Our men lost sight of Dr. Dara. Another board member looked relieved. So she escaped? Reeves slowly shook his head. No. His voice became tense. Someone else found her first. At that exact moment, Dara heard another knock at her apartment door. This one was louder. More urgent. She carefully walked toward it. Who is it? A calm voice answered from the hallway. Dr. Dara Kings. There was a brief pause. My boss is alive because of you. She gripped the doorknob tightly. We need to speak. And we don't have much time. Dara looked through the peephole. Standing outside her door were 3 men in black suits. Behind them, parked at the curb, was a long black SUV. She had seen those men before. They were Kong Min-jae's bodyguards. Before she could decide whether to open the door, the sound of an elevator opening echoed down the hallway. Another group of men stepped out. They weren't carrying flowers. They weren't carrying briefcases. They were reaching inside their jackets. And every instinct in Dara's body told her the next few seconds would decide whether she lived or died. The elevator doors slid fully open. 4 men stepped into the hallway. Their faces were hard. Their hands disappeared inside their jackets. The 3 bodyguards standing outside Dara's apartment reacted at once. One of them raised his hand toward Dara's door. Doctor, stay inside. The 4 men stopped walking. For one long second, nobody moved. Then the oldest bodyguard spoke. You picked the wrong building. One of the strangers smiled. We're only here to ask the doctor a few questions. You can ask them somewhere else. The hallway became quiet. Then everything exploded. One of the strangers pulled out a handgun. The bodyguards reacted instantly. Get down. A loud crash echoed through the hallway as one bodyguard slammed the gunman's arm into the wall. Another attacker rushed forward. The second bodyguard tackled him before he could fire. Dara stumbled backward inside her apartment. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. She had never seen violence this close before. The sounds outside grew louder. Furniture crashed. Men shouted. Glass shattered. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. The hallway became silent. Someone knocked firmly on her door. Dr. King's. It was the calm voice she had heard earlier. The danger has passed. She hesitated. Please open the door. Slowly, Dara unlocked it. The hallway was a mess. Broken glass covered the floor. One attacker was unconscious. The others had escaped down the stairwell. The oldest bodyguard looked at her respectfully. My name is Mr. Han. She looked at him with confusion. You work for Kong Min-jae. Yes. I don't understand. Our boss sent us. Why? Because someone wants you dead. Dara shook her head. This doesn't make any sense. Mr. Han reached into his pocket and handed her a sealed envelope. Our boss asked that you read this. She slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. The writing was neat. Dr. Dara Kings. You saved my life without asking who I was. You expected nothing in return. The people chasing you are the same people who tried to kill me. Until this ends, you will not face them alone. Kong Min-jae. Dara looked up. I don't need protection. Mr. Han answered gently. With respect, doctor. You do. She looked down the hallway. What happens now? Our boss would like to meet you. I can't. Why? I have a disciplinary hearing. Mr. Han nodded. We know. He also knows. He intends to help. Dara folded the note carefully. I don't want anyone breaking the law for me. Mr. Han smiled faintly. Our boss gave us one instruction. What instruction? Protect the doctor. Nothing more. Dara thought for several seconds before speaking. I'll meet him. An hour later, Dara entered a quiet private rehabilitation center instead of the mansion she had expected. Mr. Han noticed her surprise. Our boss wanted somewhere no one would suspect. She nodded. When the room door opened, Kong Min-jae stood beside a window. His movements were slower than before. The bandages beneath his shirt reminded everyone he was still recovering. He turned toward her. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Kong bowed his head. Thank you. Dara blinked. You don't need to thank me. I do. You gave me another chance to live. I treated a patient. You risked your future. I accepted that risk. Kong studied her face. Most people would have walked away. I couldn't, even after learning who I was. She answered honestly. It didn't matter. He smiled for the first time. That is exactly why they fear you. Dara frowned. I watched the video. So you know, they wanted you dead. Yes. And they're destroying evidence. Yes. She looked directly at him. What aren't you telling me? Kong walked to a table covered with documents. He spread several photographs across it. Hospital executives. Fake companies. Money transfers. Security camera images. There is corruption inside your hospital. I know. It goes beyond the hospital. Dara looked through the papers. There are politicians. There are businessmen. There are organized criminals. She slowly looked back at him. How many people are involved? More than either of us expected. Her shoulders dropped. No wonder they suspended me. They needed someone to blame. They chose the newest doctor. They believed no one would question it. Mr. Han stepped forward. Our investigators recovered copies of financial records. Another bodyguard added. We also located the ambulance driver. Dara looked up. The one from the video? Yes. Will he testify? He already has. Hope slowly returned to Dara's face. So we can stop them. Kong remained quiet. What is it? She asked. There is still one problem. What? The evidence proves corruption. She nodded. But it must be presented legally. I understand. If it is handled the wrong way, every guilty person could walk free. Dara took a deep breath. So what do we do? Kong answered without hesitation. You attend your hearing. She looked surprised. They're trying to destroy me. I know. They'll lie. I know. They'll say I endangered a patient. I know. So why would I walk into that room? Kong looked directly into her eyes. Because this is exactly where they expect you to give up. She became quiet. He continued. They believe fear will keep you away. It won't. Good. Then let them begin the hearing. And when they believe they've won. He gently placed a folder in front of her. We tell the truth. If you're enjoying this story, this is the perfect time to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. More emotional stories like this are on the way, and your support helps us keep bringing them to you. The next morning arrived faster than Dara expected. She dressed carefully in her best navy blue suit. She looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back seemed stronger than the frightened doctor who had left the hospital days earlier. She picked up her mother's photograph. Walk with me today. Then she left the apartment. Outside, reporters were already gathering near the hospital entrance. News cameras pointed toward the disciplinary hearing room. Hospital employees whispered as Dara walked through the front doors. Some avoided looking at her. Others stared openly. One nurse quietly whispered, I'm praying for you. Dara smiled. Thank you. She walked into the hearing room alone. The board members were already seated. Director Reeves looked completely confident. Several lawyers organized thick folders on the table. Reeves smiled as Dara took her seat. I'm glad you came, Dr. Kings. She met his eyes. I almost didn't. He leaned back in his chair. It won't matter. Just then, the courtroom clerk stood. The disciplinary hearing will now begin. Outside the hospital, a convoy of black SUVs slowly turned into the parking lot. Inside the lead vehicle, Kong Min-jae adjusted his jacket. Mr. Han looked at him. Boss. Kong nodded calmly. It's time. Neither of them noticed another vehicle parked across the street. Inside sat the hospital ambulance driver. His hands were shaking. He looked at a sealed envelope on the passenger seat. Inside it was his signed confession. He whispered to himself, I should have told the truth sooner. Then he reached for the door handle. Before he could step out, another car sped toward him from the far end of the parking lot. The speeding car slammed into the side of the ambulance driver's vehicle with a deafening crash. Metal twisted. Glass exploded across the parking lot. People screamed and ran for cover. The driver struggled to breathe. His forehead was bleeding, but he was still conscious. He reached for the sealed envelope on the passenger seat. I have to get this to them. Before anyone else could move, Kong Min-jae's bodyguards rushed across the parking lot. Mr. Han pulled the damaged door open. Careful. The ambulance driver looked at him with frightened eyes. They tried to stop me. Mr. Han took the envelope. Can you still walk? The driver nodded weakly. I have to tell the truth. Inside the hearing room, the chairman struck the table with a small wooden hammer. This disciplinary hearing is now in session. Director Reeves stood first. He adjusted his tie and smiled politely. Members of the board, Dr. Dara Kings ignored direct instructions from hospital leadership. She carried out an unauthorized operation that placed our staff, our patients, and this institution in danger. Several board members nodded. One lawyer placed a thick file before the chairman. We are requesting that Dr. Kings lose her medical license. The chairman looked toward Dara. Dr. Kings, do you wish to respond? Dara slowly stood. Her hands trembled for only a moment. Then she remembered her father's words. I'm proud of you. She took a deep breath. I became a doctor to save lives. A few people quietly shook their heads. She continued. When Mr. Kong arrived, he was dying. No one disputes that, Reeves interrupted. Dara looked at him calmly. Then you also know there wasn't time to wait. Reeves smiled. You should have followed orders. Dara answered without raising her voice. If obeying an order means watching someone die when I can help, then I chose my oath. The room became quiet. One board member leaned forward. So you're saying you would do it again? Without hesitation, Dara answered. Yes. If another dying patient entered that hospital today, I would still fight to save them. Some people in the audience quietly applauded before security asked them to stop. Reeves laughed softly. Very emotional. He looked toward the chairman. But emotion is not evidence. The chairman nodded. Do you have evidence supporting your actions, Dr. Kings? Before Dara could answer, the hearing room doors opened. Everyone turned. Kong Min-jae walked inside. The room became completely silent. Several reporters immediately began taking photographs. Reeves' smile disappeared. The chairman looked surprised. Sir, this is a private hearing. Kong spoke calmly. I am the patient whose life is being discussed. No one answered. He slowly walked beside Dara. He looked at the chairman. This doctor saved my life. Then he turned toward Reeves. And you wanted me dead. Gasps filled the room. Reeves quickly stood. That's an outrageous accusation. Kong nodded toward Mr. Han. The bodyguard placed several folders and a laptop onto the evidence table. We have security recordings. We have financial records. We have payment trails. And Mr. Han looked toward the courtroom entrance. We have a witness. The ambulance driver slowly walked into the room with a bandage around his head. The entire board stared at him. Reeves' face turned pale. You? The driver lowered his head. I'm done lying. He looked toward the chairman. I was paid to help make sure Mr. Kong never left that hospital alive. The room erupted with shocked voices. The chairman struck the table repeatedly. Order, order. The driver continued. The director and several executives arranged everything. They believed if Mr. Kong died, their financial crimes would never be discovered. He pointed toward Dara. She ruined their plan. That's why they suspended her. They needed someone to blame. Reeves slammed his hand on the table. He's lying. Mr. Han calmly handed the chairman another folder. Those are certified bank records. Another investigator connected the laptop to the hearing room screen. The security recordings played. The room watched in silence as the director discussed Kang's death before the operation. No one spoke when the recording ended. The chairman slowly removed his glasses. He looked directly at Reeves. Do you have an explanation? Reeves opened his mouth. Nothing came out. At that exact moment, investigators entered the hearing room carrying official warrants. The lead investigator spoke clearly. Samuel Reeves, Michael Grant, Helen Brooks, Daniel Ross. He looked around the room. You are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice, and related financial crimes. Several officers stepped forward. Handcuffs clicked. The reporters rushed toward the doors. Television cameras captured every moment. Reeves looked desperately toward Dara as officers escorted him away. She simply watched in silence. She felt no joy, only relief. The chairman slowly stood. Dr. Dara Kings. Yes, sir. On behalf of this board. He paused. We owe you an apology. The room became quiet again. Your suspension is lifted immediately. Your employment record will be cleared. And this board unanimously restores every privilege connected to your medical license. People throughout the hearing room stood and applauded. Some nurses wiped tears from their eyes. The two interns who had helped Dara during the surgery smiled proudly from the back of the room. One of them whispered, I told you she'd be okay. Weeks later, the hospital invited Dara back. This time, the welcome felt very different. Doctors who had laughed at her now greeted her with respect. Patients thanked her. Young medical students asked for photographs with her. The chairman offered her a prestigious leadership position. You've earned this. Dara smiled warmly. I'm honored, but I'd like to serve in the emergency department. He looked surprised. Why? She glanced toward the ambulance entrance. Because that's where people need hope the most. Not long afterward, Kong Min-jae quietly made a donation through a legal charitable foundation to expand the hospital's trauma services. He never asked for his name to appear on the building. When a reporter later asked Dara why she had risked everything for a stranger, she smiled gently. My patient wasn't a title. He wasn't a rumor. He was a human being who needed help. That's all I needed to know. Months later, Dara stood in the same emergency room where her journey had nearly ended before it truly began. Another new doctor nervously reported for a first night shift. Some employees smiled at the rookie with uncertainty. Dara walked over and offered a reassuring handshake. Welcome. The young doctor smiled. I'm afraid I'll make mistakes. Dara nodded kindly. We all do. The important thing is to never stop caring. Outside, another ambulance arrived. Dara adjusted her white coat and walked confidently toward the emergency entrance, ready to serve the next patient who needed her. She had nearly lost everything by choosing compassion. In the end, compassion became the very reason her life changed forever. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who believes that doing the right thing is always worth it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.